Good day, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. I'm doing well myself. Uh, Sorry, guys, I've been out for a while. I had to attend some family issues, but I'm back. And for those who've been supporting, and please continue supporting, like subscribing and share. And let's get straight away. So today I wanted to talk about the rise of right-wing movements in Europe. And if you look at how things have been happening in Europe of late, one can start to realize, if you've been paying attention, that there's a rise of right-wing movements. Some have taken government, some have become majority in parliament, some have become even though they haven't become majority or taken over the government, they fall under, the second largest party. And, when I look at Europe in terms of right wing, Europe has been a center of democracy, because the last time we had right wing movements, especially in Western Europe, was uh, World War II. And, we had the USSR, where the, the war between the Cold War between the USSR and the United States, where where the USSR was a communist state, democracy was not that open. But generally, you find that Europe has been one of the pioneers of democracy, and America. And when I look at the rise of right wing, if you look at 10 years ago, these right wing movements in Europe weren't that big. Some of them didn't even get 5% of the vote. Some of them were getting as low as 2%. But when I look, I start to see that this has been a gradual you know, has been a gradual rise of these right-wing movements, because they've been campaigning on the misfortunes, or let me just say the misgovernance of of these liberal parties, the one that were being elected normally. They've been campaigning against their failures. And if you look, my first good view of how the right-wing movements became very, very dominant. You look at the immigration issue of the Syrian refugee. To me, that was the first signs that Europe was going to be more right-wing, because we must remember that when the refugee crisis happened, when Syrian refugees were coming to Europe, and Libya had fallen. We had so many people from North Africa, Africa coming to Europe. Most European countries found themselves, at the mercy of the European Union. The European Union was a superstructure which controlled how these other states were functioning, especially when it came to immigration issues, because you see that even though countries are independent, are sovereign, they have their own rights to do what they want. The European Union also has a superstructure. Is a very powerful superstructure, because it controls. If a country is in the euro, it signs a treaty and accepts the most of the rules will become from the EU will apply directly to this country. And we saw that some of the countries were willing to accept the immigrants. We saw Germany went to that extent. Some Nordic countries, and some, especially the Eastern European ones, and the ones that have a very strong cultural setting, were very reluctant. And this really pulled the EU on two sides, because you found that some countries were willing, some countries were not. In fact, uh, I believe that the immigration crisis of the Syrian North Africa was one that led to the Brexit issue. I feel the Brexit issue was there, but it was accelerated by this crisis, because Britain felt that being in the EU, it was bound by the European rules. There was a lot of immigrants coming to Britain. Britain is a very powerful economy, a very successful economy. And I remember at that time reading an article of of a British person. He given in his account of where that he used to go to the gym, and most of his people around the neighbor were Britain. But over the years, he started to realize that most people in the neighborhood were from Ukraine, from Hungary, from all these eastern countries. And he said this is one of the reasons why he voted and he supported for Brexit. And if you look at that, you start to see that the European Union had started to have cracks, and also this now pushed for for right-wing parties to take advantage and try to tell their populations, you see, you give us a chance, and we'll ensure that we'll ensure that your fears are not become fears anymore. If it's the issues of immigration, we'll take care of them. We'll ensure that no immigration laws are tightened. And when Brexit happened, it was one of those reasons where the European Union superstructure was really, really seen to be influencing British politics, British laws, or undermining British politics and British laws. And Britain being a former superpower, a former colonial power, it felt that it needed to regain its dominance because British commands 56 Commonwealth countries, and it felt that it was subservient to this superstructure. And this is one of the reasons which fueled Brexit. And, at that time, we all, I just saw like the Brexit issue will now become a catalyst, and it will become a wildfire of pushing other countries to, to also think like, or take the route that Britain has taken. And this also was, the issue of Brexit was not the only one, because also the election of Donald Trump also fueled the right-wing movement, especially in Europe, because some of these European parties and some of these European citizens saw that if America can really put someone who speaks about their core issues in terms of immigrants, and the reason why I'm saying their core issues is because even though some of the issues might be right-wing, the fact that these people are addressing these issues and they are getting elected, it means that they're speaking what most of the people want to hear. And this was an indication, when Trump, campaign was a right-wing campaign, America is considered the best democracy. This really, the election of Trump really put a hole in the democracy structure, especially in Europe, because citizens, most European citizens ask themselves, if America can do this, why can we not? Because you remember that immediately Trump entered the White House, he made executive orders limiting citizens from most Muslim countries. What he's been campaigning about. He went about to initiate the building of the wall in the border of Mexico, to keep immigrants away. So it was some kind of movement happening. And then you come to France, the same thing. France is a country that has a lot of immigrants. The economy has been struggling, and you see all that Marie Le Pen, from the time she started running, she didn't have that that attraction. But you see the just concluded election this year, she came so close to beating Macron. So her star has been rising, and probably if she runs the next election, she might win. So it means that if you look at that, you can see that the rise of the right-wing kind of politics is very dominant in Europe now, because most Europeans feel they've been let down by these liberal parties. They speak about social change. They never do anything about immigration. They are seen as as how Trump was saying, they are seen in bed with the deep state. Working together with the swamp. So the right wing are seen to come and drain the swamp. And even a country like Sweden, nobody expected. Nordic countries are considered very democratic, but now a right-wing party is now it has become number two, and has a good majority on the Swedish party, a right-wing party that has been campaigning against immigrants. If you go to Hungary, you see Orban. The other day, the European Union declared Hungary is not a democratic country anymore, and the Europeans have also frozen money for the EU. They've frozen 7 billion euros that that Hungary needs, to operate, because it's not now considered as a democracy. And also remember that Orban has been serving Hungary as Hungary president for a very long time. So and he was voted on the basis that he's anti-European ideologies, of same-sex marriage, of you know of of promoting he's more of a traditional person. I'd say that, and it seems Hungarians, that's what they want. And let's remember that even when Orban entered, he won the election, immediately said he was willing to work with Putin. He was even willing to pay Russian gas and oil with rubles, and this really angered the European Union. In fact, Orban has been seen as the person who has been pulling, one of the people who have been pulling and creating tears among the EU political structure, because the EU says one thing and then Orban says the other. They are willing to work with Putin. They are saying that the European Union is infringing on their rights. There's even talk that Hungary could probably try to exit the European Union, and this puts the European Union at a very tricky situation, because it's some countries are starting to see it as a threat on their democracy or their values, and also the fact that European Union is resulting to some kind of sanction or arm twisting of these countries, not helping, it's just making them become more tougher. If you look at the new Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, she's also from a right-wing party, from Mussolini. She the mentor. She speaks the same thing. Italy actually has been having a big issue of immigration, from North Africa, and Italians have been really fed up, about this, and they wanted a different kind of government. And let's not forget that Italy also has a debt their debt is 150% of their GDP. So economically, they're struggling, and this is another right-wing party now taking over the Italian government. She's the first female prime minister, and immediately the EU uh, issued a warning that they support democracy, but the governments that will try and fight be against democracy, EU has the tools to tame them. Let's not forget what I said about Hungary, being denied money, being treated as not a democracy anymore. So the EU is also trying to warn these right-wing parties that they must tread carefully. A country like Italy has a high debt. It doesn't want to get on the wrong page with the European Union, especially the European Central Bank, because it has to repay its debt. And the European Union can use many tools, like that, like in Greece or in this Cyprus, where where they freeze the money. They can do that to Italy, and they can freeze their money. They can limit their use of the SWIFT system. And I feel that the democratic structure of the European Union is really being stretched, and it would be very interesting to see how the EU maneuvers, because countries like Italy and France, if they fall to the right wings, and these countries are one of the biggest economies in Europe, that could be a big blow. A country like Hungary, it's easy to deal with it. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's manageable. But countries which are very influential and have big economies, like Sweden, like France, like Italy, especially Italy now, one of the biggest economy, one of the founding members of the European Union. If they start to go right wing, how can the European Union deal with that? If they decide to eject themselves from the European Union and do a Brexit, like Britain, how can the European Union survive? What measures or what tools can they use? And this will be very interesting to see how it goes in the future. But something has to be done. I think the European Union needs to engage all parties and ensure that, because I don't think the European Union can afford another big country leaving the European Union, because this will discredit, it will start poking holes on the European Union, and, and it might lose legitimacy from other countries, in Europe. Slovakia is also having nationalistic sentiments. You go to Czech Republic, it's also having nationalistic sentiments. So it's and all these are geared, all these nationalistic arguments are geared between a tussle between individual countries and the European Union, because countries feel they are not allowed to make their own individual choices. It has to be a blanket. And don't forget, it started with the migrant crisis, from Syria and North Africa. And then now it came to COVID, the economies went down, things did, and the European Union also wasn't seen as to handle the COVID situation well, especially in terms of premeditated, making arrangements that in before even the COVID happened, that most European countries had resources. And now we have this Russian and Ukraine, which has now even destroyed, the democratic space in most countries, because now, because of the EU pushing for sanction against Russia, most countries have, their the economies have hit a slump, food prices, oil prices, and that's why you can see even a country like Hungary is not willing to, to cut ties with Russia, because it feels that EU doesn't hear. EU just want to make decision on their own, but individual countries are hurting. If you see, most countries now are against the sanctions because they feel prices are going up, and this has pushed now countries to make individual choices and not rely so much on the European Union. But then again, if you're in the European Union, you must abide by those rules. You signed a charter, and you can see, even if you try to exit, how it has been very messy for Britain. It hasn't been that easy. Even when Britain tried to exist, there was all this talk. If Britain exited from the European Union, it will become a superpower, it will chart its own path. But that has not happened. In fact, Britain will. There were talks that Britain now will control its own market, its own economy. It will have a lot of, but that has not happened. Things are expensive in Britain, because also Britain has been affected by the COVID, the war. Even if when Britain left the European Union, it doesn't command the power anymore, as it just left the European Union. Now you can see that even Britain has now become, like a poster boy or a small brother of the United States. It has just traded one superstructure for another. So it won't be that easy. Even if Italy leaves, we saw how EU managed the Greece crisis. The European Union took over, and they imposed their own way to ensure that Greece abided by all, the European way and regulation. So I believe this is not the first or the last time we're going to see this populist movement, because as I've said, there's a tussle between the European Union and the individual countries who feel they have a sovereign right to dictate, what happened in their country. And it will be interesting to see how it goes. It's something I'll keep an eye on, and also, apart from Europe, even the whole world is experiencing the same issue. But I just wanted to focus on Europe, because Europe has been a very interesting continent, one of the pioneers of democracy. And, looking at this trend, it will be very interesting to see how these countries forge forward, and if will the EU last, or will the EU tame these countries? Because the European Union, as they have said, they have the tools to manage, to enforce this country. But they risk also a heavy reprisal from this country, because they can't use the same tactics they are using on Russia, on member states. So it will be very interesting to see, and I'll keep you guys informed. It's always a pleasure, coming here and talking to you guys, and engaging. Thank you a lot. See you later, guys. Cheers.